Morning sunlight spilled through the glass walls of Sterling and Hunt Corporation's towering building, reflecting off polished marble floors where people in sleek suits hurried to their offices. Among them was not an executive or a manager, but a man in a faded gray uniform pushing a mop bucket, Aiden Cole. His name tag had started to peel from the edge, and his hands were rough from years of scrubbing floors, but his eyes, calm, steady, and quietly intelligent, saw more than most people realized. Aiden wasn't supposed to be noticed in a place like this. To everyone, he was invisible, the janitor who showed up early, worked quietly, and left late. But that morning fate decided otherwise. "Excuse me," came a sharp, confident voice behind him. Aiden turned to see Ethan Sterling, the company's 30-something CEO, known for his arrogance and his obsession with status. Dressed in a custom navy suit, his smirk carried the weight of wealth and ego. "Hey, janitor," Ethan said with mocking emphasis, his tone dripping with superiority. "Tell me, do you even understand what finance is, or do you just clean up after those who do?" A small crowd of employees nearby chuckled under their breath. The janitor was an easy target, and everyone knew Ethan loved a show. But Aiden didn't flinch. He simply looked up, his brown eyes steady, and said softly, "I understand enough to know money doesn't make a man valuable, sir. How you treat others does." The quiet in the hallway thickened. Ethan's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, just long enough for the laughter to die. If you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Let's keep stories of hope alive together. The tension in the office that morning spread like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone was whispering about how the janitor had stood up to the CEO. But to Aiden, it wasn't about pride. He hadn't meant to humiliate anyone. He was just tired of watching people look down on others. Every night he came home to a small, cluttered apartment where his 8-year-old daughter Nora waited with homework spread out on the kitchen table. He'd help her study before tucking her into bed, promising her that someday life would be easier. Nora didn't know her father had once been a finance graduate, top of his class at a small university, with dreams of working in investment analysis. But those dreams had died the night his wife, Claire, passed away unexpectedly. Left alone with an infant and a mountain of bills, Aiden had taken the first job he could find, janitorial work. One shift led to another, and soon years had gone by. He'd stopped chasing dreams. Survival was enough. A few days after the confrontation, Ethan Sterling stood in the boardroom presenting quarterly numbers to his directors. The company was struggling. Revenues were down. Investors were nervous, and the CEO's confidence was starting to crack. After the meeting, he stormed into the break area, and there, by sheer coincidence, was Aiden again refilling his mop bucket. Ethan glared at him. "Still here, huh? Guess mopping floors doesn't take much thinking." Aiden didn't respond right away. He simply smiled faintly and said, "Thinking's what I do while I mop, sir." "Numbers, strategies, old habits die hard." Ethan frowned. "Strategies? You mean to tell me you, a janitor, think about corporate strategy while cleaning toilets?" Aiden shrugged. "Finance isn't just about money. It's about purpose, balance, and understanding risk. This company's running high on image and low on empathy. That's a dangerous equation." Ethan scoffed, but something about the man's calm tone gnawed at him. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of him. He looked up Aiden's file. The HR note surprised him. Aiden Cole, Bachelor of Finance, graduated with honors, former analyst intern, widowed, single parent. For the first time, Ethan Sterling felt embarrassed. The janitor he mocked might actually know more about finance than half his board. The next morning, when Ethan walked into the office, Aiden was already there, polishing the hallway mirrors. "Cole," Ethan said awkwardly, "you used to study finance?" "Yes, sir." Life took a different turn. Ethan hesitated before asking, "If you had the chance to fix a company's financial structure, where would you start?" Aiden paused his work and thought for a moment. "I'd start with the people. Numbers reflect behavior. If your employees don't trust leadership, they stop giving their best. If your products are built for profit instead of purpose, customers stop believing in you. Fix the foundation, the human part, and the numbers will follow." Ethan blinked. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not his consultants, not his board, and certainly not anyone in a janitor's uniform. The next few weeks changed everything. Quietly, Ethan began inviting Aidan to late evening discussions under the guise of casual talks. He'd ask, "What would you do if sales were dropping in 3 regions?" Or, "How do you handle investor panic?" And Aidan, with his calm patience and deep understanding, always had an answer rooted in both logic and humanity. One evening, Aidan said something that stuck. "Sir, finance isn't about winning. It's about sustaining. Anyone can make money fast, but only visionaries make it last." Ethan went home that night thinking about those words long after the city lights faded. But then came the crisis. A major investor pulled out suddenly, citing lack of confidence in Sterling and Hunt's leadership. Panic spread through the boardroom. Share prices plummeted. The directors blamed Ethan for reckless expansion and emotional decision-making. The young CEO, usually untouchable, suddenly looked like a man cornered. During the chaos, Aidan was quietly cleaning outside the boardroom. He heard the shouting, the tension, the fear. When Ethan stepped out looking defeated, Aidan met his eyes and said softly, "If you're open to it, I might have an idea." Ethan stared at him, half desperate, half doubtful. "You, the janitor." Aidan just nodded.
Me?
The janitor who's been listening. And so, for the first time, Ethan invited him in. The board members exchanged stunned looks as the man in the faded uniform entered the room, holding a simple notebook. Aidan spoke gently, but every word hit with clarity. "You're losing investor confidence because you've lost your story. You've become a company of numbers, not purpose. People don't invest in profits, they invest in people. Let me show you what your employees and customers really value." He presented a grassroots restructuring plan, cutting unnecessary executive bonuses, reinvesting in employee welfare, and creating community outreach initiatives that aligned with their brand. His ideas were bold, human-centered, and, surprisingly, mathematically sound. At first, the board was skeptical, but when Aidan broke down the numbers, connecting cost savings to morale boosts and long-term sustainability, even the CFO leaned forward. By the time he finished, the room was silent. Ethan finally said, "How did you come up with all this?" Aidan smiled faintly. "By cleaning up your offices, sir. You can tell a lot about a company by the dirt it hides." A week later, Ethan called an emergency press conference. He announced a new strategic direction, one that focused on people, integrity, and long-term impact. The stock began to recover. Investors slowly returned. Within months, Sterling and Hunt not only stabilized but thrived beyond expectations. But what no one expected was what happened next. One afternoon, the HR department sent out an internal memo. Aidan Cole, promoted to senior financial consultant, Employee Impact Division. The entire building buzzed with disbelief. The janitor had become a consultant. Some whispered that Ethan had lost his mind. Others said it was poetic justice. When Aidan showed up to work that day in a crisp white shirt instead of his gray uniform, everyone turned to look. He still smiled the same humble smile, still greeted the receptionist by name, still held the elevator for others. Only now, people looked at him with something new, respect. A few days later, Ethan invited Aidan to his office. On his desk sat 2 mugs of coffee. "You changed how I see things," Ethan admitted. "When I first met you, I thought success was about power. You taught me it's about purpose. You didn't just fix this company. You fixed me." Aidan chuckled quietly. "You fixed yourself, sir. You just needed someone to hand you a clean mirror." Months passed, and life for Aidan and Nora finally began to ease. He was able to move them into a better apartment. Nora started piano lessons, something she'd always dreamed of. Every night she'd tell her father, "I'm proud of you, Dad." And Aidan, who had once felt invisible, finally began to believe he was seen, not just for his work, but for who he was. One evening, the company held a charity gala to celebrate their new social initiatives. Ethan stood on stage to give his speech, and to everyone's surprise, he called Aidan up beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "this man taught me that greatness doesn't wear a title. It wears humility. When I asked him to teach me finance, I didn't know he'd teach me life instead." The room erupted in applause. Aidan, overwhelmed, simply said, "Sometimes life puts us in places we never planned, not to punish us, but to prepare us. Every floor I cleaned taught me something about resilience, and every act of kindness taught me something about wealth." The story of the janitor who transformed a corporation spread across social media, inspiring thousands. People wrote messages like, "True success is measured by heart, not money," and "Never underestimate the quiet."